All right. Good morning, everyone. So welcome to the day 3 session, which is like the Android library usage and top Android libraries. These are the two topics that I would be touching. So more than a session, I would say it's more of my experience and ideas that I would like to exchange. And at the same time, I would also like to know what are the libraries that you have used or the hurdles that you have faced while using a library or a nice or a bad experience that you have faced. So I would like to keep this also as an open discussion and also share when you're using a library, what are the right factors that you need to look for when you're choosing one? Because when I look for image processing, I have tons of libraries available. So which is the right one to choose? How to choose the right one? So these are the small features that I would like to just add so that it will help you in understanding the library part and how to choose one and how to use it effectively while you're building your applications. So whenever I pick a topic, as I said, what is a library first? And why and when to use a library? So is it really necessary for my app to use, or I can come up with a small functionality to mimic that same feature? Choosing a right library. As I told you, we have tons of library available in the market. Where to find this library? That is also an important point. We have tons of resources, top libraries, because whenever you, if you are a proficient Android developer or you someone learning, there are set of libraries which everybody would use it. The moment I say image processing, they would say yes, I'm going to use these two libraries, I'm not going to look back for anything else. So there are those kind of top libraries. And another one is how to include these libraries. Is there a only way, like using the dependency, or is there any other ways? So it's going to be more about libraries today. So I feel library plays a kind of a major game changer in the software development life these days, irrespective of the platform or the stack, because it we leverage that effort of the other developers to perform some actions. Because at the end, we all want is to expedite some process and have some less boilerplate code. That is what our goal is. So, if you ask me what is library, it's a very common thing which we use in our day-to-day life during the development process and makes the life of the developer job easy, because I don't want to keep doing something kind of reinventing the wheel and sitting and doing a functionality which someone has already spent hours of time doing it. So, and easy at the same time, developer needs to implement that's already done by someone. So just utilize it. That is also a smart way of doing things. So if you don't know where to look for one or how to use it, you will end up doing reinventing the wheel. So try to act smart when you're trying to use a library, especially the third party libraries. Say, for example, if this is one app which your client is looking for, this kind of animation, if it's already done by someone, do you think I would spend hours together just to do the same functionality? No, I would easily use it if is this one kind of feature that I'm looking in my app. It's like a simple folding cell. Or if there's someone who's looking for a scrollable list, something like this, and if it's readily available, I would definitely use one. Or if my app is looking for some kind of an image processing, something like this, where I have a slider view and the same image is kind of reflecting on the background. So if I have something readily available, definitely I would use third party libraries. So these are one such examples. Now, if you ask me why we exactly use libraries, so I have explained you all these use cases. Now, also there are a couple of other reasons also. The first thing, it's to expedite your process. Couple of other thing is there might be some problems where you must have already solved it and you don't want to reinvent the wheel. So that is one more. And also, at the end the goal of a library or a developer is basically to simplify this abstract complexity of the code, where it is already packaged by some other developer and just use them in the project. By doing this, what we are kind of achieving it, we can save tons of coding work, one thing, and replacing it with a highly qualified code check, quality check, pre-tested code. Because definitely when I'm writing it for the first time, it's not going to be the best code. It has to be kind of modified, reviewed, quality check, whether it's okay in all devices, in all scenarios, well tested. It is not. But someone, if they are maintaining a library, they would have done all these pre-checks. So try using these kind of libraries. That's why we say why use library is for these reasons. But there are a couple of other reasons also. Whenever I talk about library, people have this, I mean, there's this gray line between a library and framework. Still, people have this confusion. For me, both framework and library are code. Both are code which is written to solve some purpose or a common problem. So when I explain something, I always relate to the day-to-day problems that we face. That is when I can easily understand. So if you say, I'm not sure, in India, we have a store called IKEA. I think these days you have these kind of stores where they give you these ready-made furnitures. They give you the tools and the necessary equipment required to fix the table or a chair, and it's very easy to do it within a couple of minutes or hours. You can get a full made chair or a table, something like that. So if I have to compare that, then I would say a library is like going to the IKEA, where you already have a house, but you just need a bit of help to get with the furniture. So you're not actually, you don't feel like you're making your own table from scratch. You don't have to make a table from scratch, right? If you want one, I'm going to the place, picking up one which suits my need, and I'm getting it back. So the IKEA allows you to pick or choose different things to go in your home, and you are in control. That's like a library. But on the other hand, framework is like building a model home. You have a kind of a blueprint with limited choice. So when it comes to architecture or design, right? And ultimately, the contractor or the blueprint are in control, and they will let you know when and where you can provide your inputs. So that is something that how I can explain what a library and how a framework is different. Or it tells what the developer what they need to do, but in a library case it does not. So that's a minor or a gray line that you need to understand when you're working in libraries, working with libraries or frameworks. Okay, so I got to know what is a library, how to choose a right library. So there are a lot of factors. It's just not this four. The next slide also cover a few more factors. So when I look for a library, I look for the quality of the library. I look how secure is it? Is it really complex to use one? Or how is the community and the support team working on this library? I have seen libraries where they are being built, but it's not being managed. There are a lot of open issues. So that kind of gives us a pinch that this library is not being well maintained. So definitely I would not use. The reason is, what if I have any future updates or any changes or problems if I face, and there's nobody to support from even the owner. So those kind of libraries we will not use it. And I'll also make sure that the library that I'm using does not force any change in my overall architecture. I'll also ensure that it is. So when I would choose a right library is, if it is a well written library, is if you go through the readme file, you should understand the smooth integration of the library. It should be well structured and that they have written, and it has to be included in a comprehensive way. The licensing has to be correct, and there should not be several restrictions saying you cannot use my product commercially, and all those kind of decisions should not be made. If that's made, then there's no point in getting those library out in open source. And also when you're using one, also please ensure to check those licenses so that you do not land up in any problem when you're using it later. Follow the terms. If it is purely open source, go ahead, use them, access its quality or performance, and try to debug and see how the security risks are with these kind of libraries. And at the end, check for the core feature. You should have a full control over the code, and it should not be that they kind of trade off with few covers spectrums when you use them, like they give you few feature, and when you're trying to use few of them, they say no, you have to become a member. I mean, it's a paid library. And also do a thorough analysis if you're using in a production. If you're just trying to explore the library part, yeah, good. But if you're using in your production environment and if you're using in a real time applications, explore all this before trying one. There are other few things which I look for in library is the rating, how well it's been performing, because ratings are not just being just given by developers. They really enjoy the feature of it, and that's when they really give the rating. Look at the size of the library. By including it, it is really increasing the size or important part of my app. Then definitely try to think about an alternative one. And read the documentation, which is very important, because sometimes library would have got deprecated, or the versions would have been old, or they could have got migrated, different updates would have happened, and you use a particular version, and then later when you upgrade a version, your app is not functioning. So look for the documents when you're upgrading or looking for the latest versions. And open issues, sometimes it happens that I always do that is whenever I see a library and I want to add another feature to it, I don't create a new library to it. I either try contacting the owner of the library because it's open source, so I can contact him. Either I check if there is already an open issue and see if I can contribute or be a part of that particular issue and contribute, or see if there's someone already working, just ask them an update as to when can I get this, or is it something which would be released in the near future or something like that. So instead of creating a new library from scratch, so that way you are also being a part of the open source community. You are also being a part of the creating a library, getting experience working with other developers. So do not reinvent the wheel here. And then finally, it's, as I mentioned, it's not only about going finding a library, using them, enjoying. It's also good to give some credits to the library people. If you really love the work of them, give some credit on their GitHub page. um, Try to promote their libraries, contribute. That is also another way of showing a token of gratification to them, right? Just not use their libraries and finish it off. Whenever you're using them, give a kind of a signature saying, I've used this library from this person. I would like to thank, show some contribution, affection, all those smileys. So if I have to say, okay, I know the library part, I know the right way to choose a library part, then what are the different types of library? If I have to see, there are so many categories available. So it could be the navigation or a standard pack. When I say standard pack, that's what I meant. These are the standard libraries that comes to my mind the moment I say something have to do with image or something to do with networking. I stick to it. And that happens only when your library is really famous and everybody is using it day in and day out. So it could be networking, scanning category, advanced pack like animations, UI component, image processing, binding, recycler view. So there are a set of libraries under this. So it's totally up to you to explore them, see what is best for you, and then use it. So keeping this category in mind, we have like top Android libraries that I have mentioned. Definitely, this is not the list. You must have used something new, or if you want to add something, you're welcome to do. Definitely, there are loads of libraries available. So, why we emphasize so much on these top 10 or top 15 or 20 is that a developer from a beginner to a standard or a master developer is kind of differentiated with the correct usage of third party libraries. Because if he's a beginner, definitely what he would do is find a library, start, okay, the moment he sees the readme file animations, oh yeah, this is what I want, and he'll randomly just blindly pick it up. But if it is a different well-built developer, you know what he would do? He would check all the criterias that actually fit, or all those check factors or checklists that he would do before using one. So that's the differentiate, and you should know when to use one. So we have the first one, the Dagger, which is like the dependency injection one, which is fully static framework for Java and Android. So it is actually an open source dependency framework which generates a lot of boilerplate code actually for us. Then how is it like kind of reducing it? If you ask me, it's more of the simplicity and the performance of the generated code with the handwritten code. And in short, if I have to say what is Dagger 2, it generates all the dependency injection boilerplate for you, right? So this is first one of the top 10 libraries used most commonly. Next is the retrofit. Say if you wanted to make some network request, you need to execute because you need to go with an async task basically, and then use a HTTP control to fetch the data. And that was not the ideal initially. And that's when they started coming up with this retrofit to deal with API returning large data. So this is a type safe HTTP client for Android. And kind of using this library made networking easier in your Android apps. And also like features like your header, custom header, request type, uploads, mocking response is easier. This is one type of library. So Picasso, again, if I talk about images, the only library that everybody would think is Picasso Glide. I'm not sure if you have something new or if you have used something which is far better than this, then definitely after this session you can talk about it. So again, Picasso, it's like a hassle-free image loading in the application. Often just in one line, I'm able to do this. So it can easily transform images to fit better in the layouts actually and reduce the memory size also. And the most advanced effects is like the custom transformation. Glide is also there. Um, then how is it like kind of different is in terms of where the loading from the cache, that is where the Glide makes it faster when compared to Picasso, or even there's Coil also these days. So if you have few more points about how different, if you've used Glide and Picasso and comparisons and you would like to share something, you're welcome to do that. But if you really want to try about images, go ahead with either Picasso or Glide. And then we have something like a barcodes from images. If you want to pass barcodes, this is one such library. And there is also CamView. And this is like a simple library which is used for accessing the device camera. By using this library, we can access the camera and perform many functions like scanning the barcode and decoding the barcode. So this is one such libraries in case if you have an app which is exclusive for barcodes. Then view binding. Actually, it is a feature that allows you to more easily write code that interacts with views. So for that, we use this. And there is another one called stetho. Um, I think it's more of a, say, we need a library or tool to automate the network call inspection just with few lines of code. And we can do this just by using this library. So no need to add logs during the development or remove them while releasing, because we definitely do that old school style of adding the logs and removing it. Now you don't need to do that. And there's no need of debugger also. So all you can do is use this library. We can get the network calls inside your Chrome desktop browser, and we can see all the network requests getting fired from the application, and we can see the latency, size, sequences, params, response, data. So it's very handy tool if you're from a web development background, you always need the debugging part. So you can use this library. And there's Android chart where if you exclusively have charts, dashboards, if your app is something of that category, you have this MP Android chart or the holograph library. And then we have this gravity view, which is also a kind of a library which is kind of very interesting. I think gravity view is like the first library for shopping app. Like you can tilt your phone to browse the product through images without you having to swipe it. So if you really want to understand how it looks and want to feel it, just give it a try and see how it is. So you can just check for this gravity view. It's more of your motion sensor reading to scrolling of the images, so it's more advanced. And then definitely testing of apps, you need a library. So testing your project is like becoming a way to make sure that the competencies and efficacy of your mobile apps. So use Espresso, where you can write beautiful, concise UI test. And there's this UI automator also, if it's like UI testing framework for cross-platform, cross-app functional UI testing, actually it is. And there's app crawler tool also, which is a part of Jetpack, which kind of automatically tests your app without needing to write or maintain a code. And there is Robo Electric and a couple of other one, but there are few which are like commonly used. And then the lotte, which is one famous library used for Android animations, that passes like Adobe After Effect animations exported, which is in the form of a JSON, and definitely one of my favorite as well. So when I say 10, do not be confined to these 10 libraries. In fact, there are more than these libraries also. So I have like Room. If you're making to develop offline apps, then definitely use Room. Then 310, it kind of handles data and date and time for your Android. You have Smart Lock. So these apps cannot be used in every day-to-day apps, which are like common apps. It totally depends on if you have a particular app which needs this feature, then I would use these libraries, and it is good for that particular app itself. But other apps, whichever I mentioned, the standard 10, every app will have an image, will have an animation, will have a networking part. So for that, I would say that is why I've created those as a standard pack and a top 10 libraries. And then you have like a smart lock for password, which is kind of automatically signs in with your credentials. Then there's a Spark button library, which creates the Twitter heart like flipped view, rounded image, which is very common. Every profile is like that circle avatar, the rounded one. Then there's this filter library, which is kind of applies filter to your image. If you're building some kind of a camera app, definitely this library would be very useful. Then you have bug finder, scissors for cropping images, confetti. So these are some of the libraries. Now, then later you might ask, okay, Kamal, I know what is library. What are the right factors to use a library? Where to find? What are the top libraries to be used, and couple of other more libraries. Now, how do I add these libraries? So, adding, we have three steps. Now, three types or three ways of adding. One is either the Gradle dependency. Pick the dependency, add it in your build Gradle at the top level of your app, and you're good to go. So by doing this, it's easy. But what is one disadvantage if you see? Say if you want to change any kind of code in the existing library, then it is not possible because it's only README. Then you have to raise an issue, get that as a new feature request, contact the owner. Once he gets a new release, or whenever he's planning or she's planning for a new release, that's when you would get. What is the next way of adding? So adding a .jar or a .ar file dependency. So in that case, you would just have the dependency file. So download it, create a lib folder under your app module, and then right click on it and you can have a library and just add this file over here. And after that, you can use that in your, it can be accessed in your project. That is another way of adding a file if you don't have the dependency and if you have a .jar file. Now, similarly, pros, it's the same, but if you come to the cons, you cannot modify the code. Again, it's the read only. And updating, another con is here, the updating the library. It gets a bit lengthier in this part, because there at least we would have the version, but here it has to be entirely re-downloaded, uploaded again, and it's a quite lengthier process. And the final one is like adding dependency as a model. So dependency is like go to the GitHub repo, download the zip file, create a new import module. Then you go to a couple of module settings and then you add your dependencies, select your library, and then you're good to go. So here you can modify the code according to your environment because it's the entire module that you're creating. But getting the updated version of the library can be difficult since we are making the code changes here. So these are three ways of adding the library. Okay, now I know all about ways to add libraries, everything. Now, where do I find libraries? I really want to start working on it. There are a couple of places in the internet to find one. One is Android Arsenal. This is one kind of a pool of libraries. So it's really kind of systematically organized, and you have people updating here. So use this as one of the guide. And there is a couple of other GitHub links, so which is the awesome Android libraries, where they have categorized library based on what is your requirement, whether it's networking, whether it's like logger, or whether it's image loader. You have the links here, so you can go explore libraries here. And one more such is this ultimate Android reference. Here also you have libraries available based on your requirements again. And they might be repetitive, but just find out if I say animation on all the three resources or four resources, which is the first one used. So that actually gives the essence that yes. Then you have something called awesome Android, which is the lib hunt. There also you can find one. And then there's mindorcs. Here also we have a couple of libraries mentioned. So people are maintaining it. It's just not they come put a library and they just disappear. No, they have been maintaining here the libraries with the latest one. So you can definitely trust these kind of links and find out the libraries that you would like to use. Okay, so until now I know about the libraries. So definitely whenever there is a product, definitely everything will have a pro and a con. So just because I'm talking about library doesn't mean that everybody have to jump in using libraries. You should also, a good developer is to understand the right and the wrong factors, or the bad factors or the good factors of every product. That's when he would be able to shape himself in using one perfectly. So when I see the pros of using a third party library is definitely it saves time, because I don't have to reinvent the wheel. I have someone which is readily they have done for me. All I have to do is just use them, so that I can instead focus more on the core and the business logic of the app, right? Next is about the modular part of the code, modular code. It's the library code is actually the natural way is to keep separate from the rest of the application code, and the communication takes place across well defined boundaries. That is the purpose of libraries. And on another side, it's been well tested. As I told you, they are pre-tested, quality check is done, they have run on several devices, and a lot of nitty-gritty minor updates would be done. So it would be a proof of use, a popular library which is being used by so many people, so many companies, so many products, and that's when they would have those kind of well certified good libraries. So they are pre-tested, so you can use them. But if you look at the cons, do not overuse libraries. Too many libraries also cause problems such as dependency conflicts, which is hard to pinpoint and fix sometimes. And if you are forced to switch libraries, your code might have to undergo some significant changes, in order to adapt to the new library. There are some cons as well. And there are some libraries which could be abandoned by the author. And if you're using it and if you want later some support, you don't have one. So think about it. And also sometimes third party library raises security concerns, and it is kind of vulnerable in open source libraries, and they're increasing targets for hackers. So just be careful when you're using something like this. So I always suggest that if you're not able to find a library which is has a unique requirement, and it's not kind of uh, used in any of the apps, then I would suggest that just creating your own functionality and finishing it for the day. Rather, I would suggest is build your own library. What is stopping you actually from building one? Because that's how people like Lotte or Dagger or Butterknife or whatever these libraries are built by people. That's how they all started. If they had confined themselves just by building their own app and they had said, okay, I'm done with my job, things would have not been easier while we were using these libraries. So if you find something which is not being built, and if you think that it is really useful and it could solve many hours of coding of another developer's life, think about it. You can come up building your own library. And yeah, I think that's it for this session. So I think by today you must have at least got the pinch as to how libraries are important, what factors you need to consider while choosing a library, and uh, if what are the resources available. And yeah, that's it for this session.